Hey everyone, Brandon here from TruckSafe. I don't have to tell you all, but commercial driving can be a challenging profession with significant responsibilities, especially when it comes to understanding and complying with the multitude of safety regulations that govern these operations. With so many rules to follow, even seasoned drivers can make mistakes that lead to roadside violations. In this video, we're going to tackle some of the most common violations discovered roadside and what fleets and drivers can do to avoid them. So stay tuned and do us a favor by clicking those like and subscribe buttons below. According to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration enforcement data, certain types of violations occur more frequently roadside than others. And these violations can cause all kinds of trouble for drivers and fleets, including out-of-service orders, fines, elevated safety scores, and more. So it's important to understand the common traps and how to avoid them. So let's take a look at some of the most common violations discovered in roadside inspections according to FMCSA data, in no particular order. First up are hours of service violations. As we've discussed repeatedly over the years, the hours of service regulations are crucial for combating fatigue driving. Regardless of what you think about the current state of those rules, violations regularly stem from drivers exceeding applicable limits, falsifying their records of duty status, and simply failing to properly document their hours using the appropriate method. These issues regularly result in fines, out-of-service orders, DOT audits, and even accidents. So how do we get a handle on this? Well, first of all, you got to know who is regulated. In our experience, so many hours of service violations stem from drivers and fleets just not fully understanding who is regulated and required to comply with the hours of service regulations. As a general rule, if you operate a commercial motor vehicle, then you're subject to the hours of service regulations. That said, certain exemptions, like the short haul exemption, may relieve you from some, but not necessarily all, of the more onerous aspects of the rules. The important part here is that you take a minute to understand whether your operations are subject to the regulations and to what extent. If you're interested, we've got several resources on this topic on our website at trucksafe.com. Next, you need to ensure that you keep an accurate log. Always maintain a precise log of your driving hours using electronic logging devices when applicable. Logs should be completed contemporaneously throughout the day rather than at the end of the day or later in the week. Failing to keep your logs up to date frequently leads to violations roadside. Also, drivers must be sure to certify the accuracy of their logs each day. Lastly, make sure you understand particular regulatory nuances. According to the FMCSA's enforcement data, log falsifications are one of the top violations discovered roadside and in audits. In many cases, these falsifications stem from the driver's or carrier's misunderstanding of applicable rules and agency guidance, including, most notably, personal conveyance. We've got several videos on that topic specifically if you're interested in learning more. But failing to properly log your duty status can lead to log falsification violations, which carry significant weight on both the carrier's CSA scores and the driver's PSP report. Okay, moving on to the next common roadside violations, which are maintenance issues. It should really go without saying, but neglecting vehicle maintenance can and regularly does lead to serious trouble. The FMCSA reports that maintenance violations are very often attributable to fleets or drivers skipping or just pencil whipping their pre-trip inspections and also failing to complete necessary repairs. The national average vehicle out-of-service rate is currently around 22%, meaning that nearly a quarter of all commercial vehicles operating in the United States are operating with a serious maintenance violation. So how can we tackle these issues? Well, first, fleets and drivers have to take their pre-trip inspections seriously. Before hitting the road, drivers are required to inspect their equipment, trucks and trailers as applicable, carefully, focusing on essential components like brakes, lights, tires, and fluid levels to spot issues early and avoid potential issues down the line. Any issues discovered that are likely to affect the safe operation of the vehicle must be properly documented on a driver vehicle inspection report, or DVIR, and rectified before the vehicle moves again. Beyond that, fleets need to be generating and maintaining maintenance records. Another top maintenance violation that occurs roadside is failing to have documentation that the vehicle and/or trailer has passed the required annual DOT inspection. Carriers and their drivers must keep either a copy of the inspection report or a sticker on the truck to prove that their equipment has been properly and timely inspected. Carriers should also be maintaining records of preventative maintenance. If they haven't already, fleets should develop and adhere to a regular preventative maintenance schedule based on the recommendations made by the manufacturers of their equipment. This can help avoid roadside maintenance issues. Okay, next up are seatbelt violations, which is probably the easiest violation on this list to avoid. Wearing a seatbelt is proven to be one of the easiest and most effective ways to stay safe while driving. Despite its importance, violations for failing to wear seatbelts remain common among commercial drivers. According to FMCSA data, roughly 14% of commercial truck drivers do not consistently use seatbelts, which can lead to serious injuries and accidents as well as regulatory violations. There's not much to say here other than you got to buckle up for your safety and to avoid costly regulatory violations. All right, next up are speeding violations, the single most prevalent violation type documented on roadside inspection reports. According to the FMCSA, speeding contributes significantly to accidents and can lead to FMCSA enforcement in the form of elevated CSA scores and fines. In fact, speeding violations account for nearly 10% of all commercial driving violations each year. So what do we do about it? Again, it's one of those issues where there's not much to say other than cut it out. Make it a point to familiarize yourself with speed limits on your regularly traveled routes and pay attention to changing speed limit signs to stay compliant. And allow extra time for your trips to avoid feeling rushed due to traffic or other problems. Okay, the last item on the list here are violations stemming from improper or downgraded licenses. Driving with an improper or downgraded/suspended license is a persistent problem in the industry. CDL violations account for a significant percentage of issues discovered roadside. To address this, fleets and drivers must first understand what type of license is needed. Too often, licensing violations stem from drivers and carriers just not understanding what type of license or endorsement is required to operate the types of vehicles they operate. For example, if you only hold a standard operator's license but end up pulling a large trailer that pushes the combination weight beyond 26,000 pounds, you likely need a CDL. This is a very common problem, and the solution is to educate yourself on the various license types and when you need them. Beyond that, make sure you have all necessary endorsements. If you hold a CDL, you need to understand that certain types of specialized equipment require you to also hold an endorsement to your CDL. School buses, tanker vehicles, hazmat, passenger carrying vehicles, doubles, triple trailers are just a few. And watch out for license restrictions. Occasionally, drivers will have certain restrictions on their licenses that prohibit them from engaging in certain conduct. Failing to adhere to these restrictions regularly leads to violations. For example, failing to wear corrective lenses when required, operating interstate when restricted to intrastate commerce, and driving a manual transmission when restricted to automatics are common suspects. Implementing these strategies not only help you avoid penalties, but also contributes to a safer driving environment for everyone. Safe driving is about more than compliance. It's about protecting lives and ensuring the longevity of your career. By staying informed and committed to safety, commercial drivers can enhance their performance and responsibility on the road. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this video. For even more in-depth information about these types of regulatory topics, be sure to check out our innovative online compliance courses for safety managers and for drivers over at trucksafeacademy.com. Also, if you're looking for an easier way to access and understand the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, check out eRegs, the first app-based digital version of the regulations over at eregs.app. Lastly, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at trucksafe.com/subscribe and follow us on our various social media pages for the latest highway transportation news and analysis. Thanks for watching.